Hello, my dear students, and today I am with the topic 3 of structure of atom. We are going to continue with photoelectric effect. Just a small recap. So you have understood what is Rutherford's model and what are the disadvantages or what are the drawbacks of the Rutherford's model. It cannot explain the electromagnetic wave theory. And what is electromagnetic wave theory? Any moving particle, any moving charged particle will create electromagnetic waves, will produce electromagnetic waves. So this theory was not in well accordance with the Rutherford's atomic model. And after the electromagnetic theories flourished, some drawbacks of electromagnetic theory also existed. What were they? They were the particle nature of the electromagnetic radiation. The radiations were considered as waves. The radiations were expected to behave only as waves as per the theory of electromagnetic wave theory. But the waves also had particle-like nature. So the particle-like properties were proved by black body radiation and photoelectric effect. In the previous class, we have understood what is a black body radiation, and in today's class, we are going to understand what is photoelectric effect. This is an important question. So, what is photoelectric effect? The phenomenon of ejection of electrons from the surface of the metal when a light of suitable frequency strikes is called the photoelectric effect. You can see this is the metal. Okay, when a light ray falls on this metal, electrons are ejected out. Electrons are knocked out. Okay, and you have to understand one word, light of suitable frequency. Any light cannot cause the electron to be knocked out. So only suitable frequency rays can cause this effect. That is called as the photoelectric effect. So how that radiation should be? The binding energy. What is binding energy? The energy holding an electron to the metal is called as the binding energy. So the energy that persists, the energy of the heating radiation should be more than that of this binding energy. Otherwise, the knocking out of the electron cannot happen. So that frequency is called as threshold frequency nu naught. That is the minimum frequency of light needed to emit an electron. For the frequencies below the threshold frequency, no electrons are emitted. So all the frequencies should be above the minimum frequency, the minimum required frequency called as the threshold frequency. So when you supply extra frequency than the threshold frequency, what happens to that extra energy? That is imparted to the electron as kinetic energy. So it is understood, if you increase the frequency, the kinetic energy of the ejected electron increases. Am I right? But if you supply the correct frequency, say if you need a frequency of 10 hertz, and if you are supplying only 10 hertz to eject an electron, only electrons are ejected. But if you supply 11 hertz, what happens? 10 hertz is used for knocking out the electron, and that extra 1 hertz energy is imparted to the electron as kinetic energy. So when you increase the frequency, kinetic energy of the emitted electron increases linearly. This is a very important question, a competitive examination question also. Now check this out. See, same thing only. What is energy? Why I am saying energy and frequency? Because you know, according to the Planck's theory, energy is equal to h into nu, h into frequency. So energy and frequency are directly related, right? More the energy, more the frequency. Okay, now you check this diagram. We have given a red light, meaning what? You're ejecting a, you're passing a red colored radiation, but no electrons are ejected out of this because the frequency is not sufficient. See here, potassium, the metal that is taken for consideration is potassium, and you need 2 electron volt of energy to eject an electron. But this red light is having only 1.77 electron volt of energy, so it is not sufficient and no electrons are ejected out. And next, coming to the green radiation. Green radiation has an energy an energy of 2.25 electron volt. That is higher than what we need, so it can eject the electrons. It can eject the electrons. Next, coming to the blue radiation, it is having an energy of 3.1 electron volt. So that is giving you the maximum number of, not that, it is giving you the electrons, knocking out the electron, and you have a electrons with more kinetic energy, because more the frequency, more will be the kinetic energy, right? Okay, now coming to the one more thing. If you are increasing the intensity of the light, yes, if I pass the green light, I'm going to eject out the electrons, I'm going to knock out the electrons. But if I increase the intensity of this green light, intensity means what? Frequency. If I increase the not frequency, light intensity is different and frequency is different. Okay, so brightness, actually intensity means brightness, frequency is different. If I increase the brightness of the light, what happens? The number of ejected photoelectrons will increase, the number of electrons ejected will increase. But if I increase the frequency, kinetic energy of the emitted electrons will increase linearly. So these 2 points you please consider. This is a very important point, and this kind of question has been asked in the competitive examinations like IIT, JEE, etc. Okay. So when a beam of light falls on a metal surface, electrons are ejected, and that is called as photoelectrons. And the radiation that you pass should have a minimum threshold frequency to achieve this. Otherwise it is not happening, right? And the frequency increases the kinetic energy of the electron, and brightness increases the number of electrons ejected. So for a photoelectric work function, we are calling it as W naught. This is a work, right? To photoelectric work to happen, how much energy you need? E is equal to h nu. And for W naught, because W naught is the photoelectric work function, so W naught is equal to h nu naught, because you need the minimum threshold frequency. So what is the energy that we need? Energy is equal to work function plus kinetic energy. Extra energy is given out as kinetic energy, right? So h nu, what is energy? Energy is equal to h nu. We are going to derive h nu is equal to, what is the work function? Minimum energy that we need, h nu naught plus half mv square. So when you bring this h nu naught to the left hand side, h nu minus h nu naught is equal to half mv naught square. So h into nu minus nu naught is equal to half mv naught square. Got it? So the energy of the ejected electron is equal to half mv naught square, and h into nu minus nu naught is equal to half mv square. So this is a formula that you have to note down for solving some problems. You may have to find out the energy of the ejected electron from this formula. So what is the formula? H into nu minus nu naught is equal to half mv square. Or what is this nu? Nu is the energy that you supply. And what is nu naught? The nu naught is the minimum frequency required for that particular electron to get ejected out. And half mv square, that is the kinetic energy, and m is the mass of the electron and v is the velocity of the electron. Okay, so one problem based on this question: in a photoelectric experiment, ultraviolet light with a wavelength of 337 nanometer was directed at the surface of a piece of potassium metal. The kinetic energy of the ejected electrons was measured as 2.30 into 10 power minus 19 joules. So they have given you the kinetic energy here. And what is the electron binding energy of the potassium? Okay, so with what you are going to find out, they have given you the wavelength of the radiation. Okay, wavelength means you can find out the frequency. You can find out the frequency. Nu is equal to c by lambda, right? So from this you can find out the nu. How to find out the nu? Nu is equal to c by lambda, 3 into 10 power 8 by 337 into 10 power minus 9 meter. Okay, that you can do. So you can find out the frequency, and that frequency you know which you are supplying, right? The frequency that you are supplying you know. So this nu you know now, right? H nu you know. H is the Planck's constant, 6.626 into 10 power minus 34 joule seconds. So H nu you know, and you're going to find out H nu naught. That is the binding energy, is it not? Binding energy or the photoelectric work function. W naught you are going to find out. W naught is equal to H into nu naught. That is the binding energy. So other things, if you substitute, you can easily find out the work function. So this sort of problems you need to practice. Now you understood the dual nature of light. The light possesses both particle-like and wave-like properties. That is, light has dual behavior. Whenever radiation interacts with matter, it displays particle-like properties. Examples are blackbody radiation and photoelectric effect. These two effects are helping us to understand that the light also have particle-like properties. But when it is showing the particle-like properties, when the radiation interacts with the matter. Okay, so wave-like properties, it also shows wave-like properties. When it propagates, when it undergoes interference and diffraction, then wave nature of the light is reflected. So now we are going to discuss some wave nature of the light and how the atomic spectrum flourished. You know, when you take light, it can undergo interference, it can undergo diffraction, it can undergo refraction, is it not? So light can, refraction means what? It is the bending of the light when it passes from one medium to another medium of different density. So speed of the light also can change. Light can bend at an angle. So the proof for light bending at an angle is the spectrum. So when you have a prism and you pass a white light into the prism, it is splitting into 7 colors. Is it not? Because it is bending, it is changing the wavelength. Depending on the wavelength, it is bending. That is why you are getting 7 different colors. It is splitting into 7 colors because it is bending. Okay, this is one nature of the wave kind of nature. This is one example for the wave-like behavior of the electromagnetic radiation or light. So we know continuous spectrum, is it not? White light can split into 7 colors in a rainbow. But sometime we always do not get continuous spectrum. We will get line spectrum. Okay, line spectrum also. So why do we get line spectrum? That line spectrum I'll explain you now. See, if you see this picture you will understand. So this is the white light, source of the continuous spectrum, is it not? Now if you place a prism here, this white light passes into the prism and splits into 7 colors. Why you call this as a continuous spectrum? Because you see the first color, blue. Okay, dark blue. The dark blue is merged into the sky blue. Sky blue is merged into the light green and it is slowly becoming darker green. Darker green is merged into the yellow color. There is no point where you can differentiate them. They are completely merged one with another. So that is why we call it as a continuous spectrum. But if you pass this white light into a cloud of gas, or if you in a cold gas, imagine if you are passing it into a gas particles which is cold. So you're getting a spectrum. Then this radiation is passing into the gas particles, and the radiations that are coming out of the gas particles, if you observe, you're getting a spectrum of this type. So here you can see some dark lines. Why you're seeing some dark lines? Because that particular radiation is absorbed by the gas particles. Okay, this particular radiation, because each light has its own wavelength, right? This is according to the electromagnetic spectrum. So this particular part is absorbed by the gas particles. That is why we cannot see that particular region. That particular region is appearing dark, and this is called as absorption spectrum. So you're getting lines, dark lines you're getting in the continuous spectrum. This cannot be explained by the electromagnetic wave theory. Okay, and sometimes if you're passing this, okay, if you're passing the white light into a gas particle, into gas particles that are hot, okay, if they are hot, initially you passed it, when it is cold you got continuous spectrum with dark lines. Now you are passing it into the gas particle that is hot. Then if you observe, okay, if you observe the radiation coming out of those hot gas particles, you can see the spectrum with dark spectrum and only few radiations you can see. Okay, you're here having a dark spectrum with only one or two colors. So these lines, you're getting blue line, violet line, you're getting a blue line, yellow line, and orange line or red line. So only this particular wavelengths are emitted by that hot gas particles. Got it? It is absorbing all other radiation, and only the radiation that it emits out is appearing as lines. So this is called as the line spectrum, and this is emission spectrum. This is absorption spectrum. So in absorption spectrum we get continuous spectra with dark lines. In emission spectrum what you get? You get only lines for certain wavelengths. Got it? So why this occurs? According to electromagnetic theory, it can explain only the continuous spectrum. But naturally we have absorption and emission spectrum also. That cannot be explained by the electromagnetic wave theory. So Bohr's model, the next upcoming model is the Bohr's model, BOHR. So Bohr can explain the reason for the absorption spectrum as well as the emission spectrum. Almost 90% of the doubts, the problems, the drawbacks that we encountered in the other models were solved by Bohr's atomic model. So according to Bohr's atomic model, the orbits, okay, so you know this is the nucleus, and you have orbits, first orbit, second orbit, third orbit, fourth orbit, and so it goes on. So each orbit was considered to be an energy level. Okay, each orbit has a particular energy. So you see why this dark lines appear. Okay, when you absorb a particular energy, when the electron absorbs that particular energy and goes from lower energy, say n is equal to 2. So if this is the second energy level, it is absorbing the violet length. If it absorbs the violet light, it can jump from n is equal to 2 level to n is equal to 6th level. Okay, so the electrons are capable of absorbing that energy. Energy means that light it is absorbing, that frequency it is absorbing, that frequency of light it is absorbing, that energy it is absorbing. So when it absorbs violet light, it can jump from second energy level to 6th energy level. If it absorbs blue light, it can jump from second energy level to 5th energy level. Is it not? So if it absorbs red light, it can jump from second energy level to third energy level. So this is the reason that you get the absorption spectrum. Got it? So Bohr's model. So this was the development that is leading to the Bohr's model of an atom. So Bohr modified the atomic structure model by explaining that electrons moved in fixed orbitals and not anywhere between. Okay, that orbit concept was clear now, and the orbit, they are moving in fixed orbitals. and not anywhere in between. And he also explained that each orbit has a fixed energy level. Rutherford basically explained the nucleus of an atom, and Bohr modified the model into electrons and their energy levels. So this is the next upcoming model given by Bohr. What he did was he has did an experiment using the hydrogen gas. So what he did, this is a tube, glass tube filled with hydrogen gas, and he passed white light into this gas tube. Okay, and that some gas can absorb some energy. This is a cold gas. It can absorb some wavelength from this white light, and the light that is coming out of this is passed into a prism, and when you observe it, you got a continuous spectrum with dark lines. We got absorption spectrum or continuous spectrum with dark lines. Okay, again what he did, he took a discharge tube, gas discharge tube, and he passed electricity. See here, this is two electrodes. The black colored dots are nothing but electrodes. Why he is placing the electrodes here? To heat the gas. Now the gas is in the higher energy level. Already it is you are supplying some heat energy, so it has already jumped to a higher energy level. See here, if the gas is colder, it will be in the lower energy. So when some light radiation is available to it, it can absorb any particular radiation, and from lower energy it can jump to the higher energy level. This is how absorption spectrum is caused. But how emission spectrum is caused? See, already I am supplying the electrical energy. Okay, I'll draw here. See, already I have supplied the electrical energy. So the particles or the electrons are in this level. Okay, now because of electrical energy, the electrons have moved to this level. Okay, so in this level, it is you are passing the radiations. So it can absorb only certain wavelength. It is already in the higher energy, so it cannot absorb anything. It is absorbing one particular radiation. So higher energy state is not always a stable state. So once if the gas particles are higher energy, it will try to come back to the lower energy state like this, because this is the stable state. Always they cannot go from their level to next level. Even though they go to the next level, next higher energy level, they'll stay there for only a shorter period of time, because higher energy is not a stable state. So it goes to a higher energy state, right? When it comes back to the lower energy state, what happens to that extra energy you have given? How they are going to the higher energy state? By absorbing some energy, extra energy, and there they cannot stay for a longer time, so they have to come back to the lower energy state. So when they come back from the lower energy state, the extra energy is emitted out as radiation like this. Okay, so if this emitted radiation falls in the red region, if this emitted radiations corresponds to the red wavelength, you will see a red line in the spectrum, red emission line in the spectrum. And if the emitted radiations corresponds to a blue line, you will see a blue line in the emission spectrum. Got it? So hot gas particles behave like this. Hot gas particles, they will absorb, already they are hot, and they absorb certain wavelength, and that wavelength is given out. Okay, only those extra energy, absorbed energy is given out as radiations, and you get emission lines, you get emission spectrum. So you see, this is the hydrogen spectrum. For one hydrogen, how many electrons a hydrogen has? Only one electron. So when you allow the hydrogen gas, okay, to absorb anything, it is already in the higher energy state. Okay, when they are in the higher energy state, any energy state, a hypothetical state, any higher energy state, and if they are coming down, if they are coming down to the first energy level from any of the higher energy state, if the electrons are coming down to the first energy level, you will get a Lyman series. And you see the Balmer series, already our electrons are in the higher energy state, any higher energy state. So from any of the highest level, if they are coming to the second energy level, then we get a series of lines called Balmer series. The third one, any of the higher energy, if it comes back to the third energy level, you will get the Paschen series. Finally, from any of the higher energy, if it comes back to the fourth level, we get the bracket series. Got it? So this is how we got the hydrogen spectrum. So this Lyman series, no, this Lyman series lies in the UV region. The wavelength that is emitted when this happens, when this Lyman series happens, the wavelength that is emitted will be in the ultraviolet region. So you cannot see them. Okay, you cannot see them, but they are in the ultraviolet region. But the Balmer series, if from any of the higher level, if it comes back to the second level, you get Balmer series. All these Balmer series lines you can see. Why? Because they are in the visible region. So Lyman series falls in the UV region, Balmer series falls in the visible region, Paschen series falls in the near infrared region. Okay, near infrared, middle infrared, then far infrared. So each region corresponds to a particular wavelength. This is called as the hydrogen spectrum. Okay, now, so what are the postulates? What Bohr is trying to tell with all the experiments with the hydrogen spectrum he has done, from the hydrogen spectrum findings and from the black body radiation, from all this information that he has collected, he is giving us a beautiful postulate. What are the postulates? What are the findings? He is giving a summary. He is giving a 90% successful model of the atom. So what are they? Bohr's model consists of a small nucleus, okay, surrounded by negative electrons moving around the nucleus in orbits. And Bohr found that electron located away from the nucleus has more energy. Okay. So the one which is away from the nucleus has more energy, and the electrons that are closer to the nucleus have less energy. Got it? And as far as Bohr's finding was revealed, no one has spoken about the energy. Okay, energy of any orbit. Only Bohr was the first to explain the orbits as energy levels. In an atom, electrons revolve around the positively charged nucleus in definite circular path called orbits or shells. Each orbit or shell has a fixed energy, and these circular orbits are also known as orbital shells. So the energy levels are represented by an integer that is known as the quantum number. So these quantum numbers we'll be discussing later. What are quantum numbers? So each energy level is represented by what? First one energy level, second energy level, third energy level, like that. And what are the numbers? What are those numbers called? Those numbers are called as quantum numbers. Okay. So that numbers corresponds to the K shell, L shell, M shell and N shell, which you already know. Right. So first energy level means it belongs to the K shell. Second energy level means it belongs to the L shell, like that. Okay. Electrons in an atom move from lower energy level to a higher energy level by gaining the required energy, and electron moves from higher energy to lower energy by losing energy. Okay, that is absorption spectrum and emission spectrum. See, when the electron moves to a higher energy level, from there this green you see, it is in the higher energy level, second energy level. So it moves to the lower energy level, n is equal to 1 or K shell, by emitting out the extra radiation. E is equal to h nu. So it is the energy is emitted now. This energy, if it falls in the UV region, it is the Lyman series. Now what are the achievements? He can explain the stability of an atom. And he told na each orbit is an energy level. Each orbit has a particular energy. He also gave a formula to find out the energy of the particular orbit. So, what is the energy given by for an electron in the hydrogen atom? Minus 2 pi square into mass of the electron into charge of the electron power 4 into z square. What is z? Z is atomic number. For hydrogen, what is the value of z? Z is equal to 1. And what is this n square? The number of the orbit. Okay, if it is in the first orbit, what is the energy level? If it is in the second orbit, what is the energy level? So with this formula, we can even tell the energy of each orbit exactly. And what is this R? R is called as the Rydberg's constant. So that also he has given. How to find out that R value also he has given. So the value comes out. If you substitute all the values, all the constant values, what we will get? We will get minus 1312 into z square by n square. So n means the energy level, in which energy level it is, and z means atomic number. So for hydrogen atom it is 1, no problem. 1 square will be 1. And if you want to calculate the first energy level, n is equal to 1. So what is the value? Minus 1312 kilojoule per mole for the first level. Okay, but and if you want to give it in the another unit like joule per atom, then the number is 2.178. So the energy of one such orbit is 2.178 into 10 power minus 8 joules per atom. Or if you want to give in the terms of kilojoules, it is minus 1312 kilojoule per mole. In case if n is equal to 1 and z is equal to 1. So the energy also he has given clearly. Now coming to the hydrogen spectrum. So I already told you how Lyman series, Balmer series, Paschen series, Brackett and Fun series were generated. Now we are going to calculate how I told you Lyman series falls in the UV region. Only if I know the energy, I know the frequency. If I know the frequency, I know the wavelength, right? So only if I know the energy, I can tell you the frequency of that particular region, the wavelength of that particular region. So how he told it? See, what is the energy of a transition? Transition means what? So from one energy level, it is going to another energy level. See, EF. EF means what? Final level. Imagine it is coming from the third level. Third level is the final level. Okay, what is the energy of the third level? You have to find out. Minus energy of the level it is coming to. So if it is coming to the first level, EF third level to the second level, that is delta E. That is our EH nu. Got it? So EF, for EF you have to substitute. What is the energy formula? This one. What is the energy now? Minus 1312 into z square by n square. Is it not? Minus 1312 into z square by n square kilojoule per mole. So that is called as Rydberg's constant. Or I can say using this formula. You see this 2 pi square m e power 4 by this r I am going to keep it as such. Okay, r I am going to keep it as such in all these things if I substitute. Okay, if I substitute all other things, then I'll get the Rydberg's constant. So the Rydberg's constant also he has found out. Now what you have to substitute for the energy of a transition. So all other values are substituted now. Okay, in the terms of Rydberg's constant, that is 2.18 into 10 power minus 18 joule per atom. This one, this number, 2.178 into 10 power minus 18 joule per atom into 1 by this n. This n you are going to write it in the n final level. What is the final level it is coming from? To the initial level it is coming to. Okay, so that only you need to substitute. Once if you substitute this, you can easily find out the energy. This Rydberg's constant already he has given. Okay, you can either substitute this for joule per atom. If you want the joule per atom unit, you can use this value, or if you want meter per meter, okay, this wavelength, if you want to substitute, you can substitute this 109677, 1.09677 into 10 power 7. If you substitute here, you will get the meter units. So what you have to do, if the final level is going to be 5 and the initial level is 1, what is the energy? If the final level is 5 and the initial level is 2, what is the energy? So you can find out. So with all this information, he found out the energy of each transition. And finally what he found out, when it comes from any of the higher level, okay, and it comes to the final level, what he means is the one it is coming to. Any of the final level, if it comes to the first level, then it is Lyman series. Any of the higher level to the final level, to the lowest level, then if it is 2, then you get Balmer, then you get Paschen, like that. See, now you see the region here. Now what is delta E? H into nu, H into C by lambda. Okay, what is 1 by lambda is equal to delta E by Hc. Wavelength also you can find out easily. Now energy, here energy you are finding out, right? So this E also you can substitute as H into nu, H into C by lambda, H into C by lambda. If instead of delta E, if you are substituting H into C by lambda, then you get 1 by lambda is equal to delta E by Hc. What is 1 by lambda? 1 by lambda is nu bar. 1 by lambda is nu bar. So nu bar is equal to delta E by Hc. So when you put all this, you will get the Rydberg's constant, 109677. Here it is given in meter, is it not? 1.096776 10 power 7. 10 power 7 it is given. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you multiply this 10 power 7, what you will get? 109677 centimeter inverse. Okay, meter also he is converting into centimeter. That is why I am writing it here. So this value you can use. Generally for Rydberg's constant you can use this value. So if a problem comes to find out the wave number of a transition, they give you this initial level and final level, right? They give you the initial level and final level transition, and you are going to find out the wave number. Means use this value 109677 into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square centimeter inverse. Got it? This value is called as the Rydberg's constant. So all this information is actually how it has come, the derivation. And what is the final value that you need to remember? The wavelength value or the wave number value. So wave number of any transition is equal to 109677 into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square centimeter inverse. So this wavelength for Lyman series, that falls in the ultraviolet region, Balmer in the visible region, and Paschen, bracket and Pfund in the infrared region. This is near infrared, middle infrared, far infrared. Infrared also you have 3 regions. So all these are in infrared, and particularly near, middle and far infrared region. Okay, so this formula will you remember? 1 by lambda is equal to nu bar. This is wave number, right? Wave number is equal to Rydberg's constant into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square. So R into Z square actually. For hydrogen atom it is 1, so Z is 1. So that value they have not substituted. For other atoms, R into Z square, that Z value, atomic number value, we have to substitute. Got it? So this is the Bohr's model. It is the 90% successful model, but still it has some demerits. What are they? Bohr's model of an atom failed to explain the Zeeman effect and the Stark effect. What is Zeeman effect? The effect of magnetic field on the spectra of atoms. Now you have seen the spectrum. This is absorption spectrum and emission spectrum he could explain. But when there is a magnetic field, okay, when there is a magnetic field, the spectrum is deviated. Okay, there is a splitting of the spectral lines even because of the magnetic field. That cannot be explained by the Bohr's model. and the spectrum of the atoms are even affected by the electric field also. So electric field also affects your spectrum, magnetic field also affects your spectrum. The effect of splitting of the lines by magnetic field is called as Zeeman effect, and the effect of splitting of lines by the splitting of lines of the spectra of atoms by the electric field is called as Stark effect. But we are not going to see in detail these two effects now. For your level, you are not going to study this. You just understand what are the demerits of Bohr's theory. So these two theories cannot be explained by Bohr. And one more theory is it violates the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay, one more principle is there, that is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. This cannot be explained by the Bohr's theory. Okay, and it could not explain the spectra for larger atoms. Though, see, for hydrogen is a one electron species. Is it not? Only one electron it has. But one electron species shows so many lines in the spectrum. Lyman series, Balmer series, Paschen, Brackett and Pfund. Imagine if a atom has a multi electrons. If an atom has multi electrons, how many lines it will produce? So complex, no? So he cannot explain the spectrum for the larger atoms. These are the demerits of the Bohr's theory. Okay. Okay. Next. So now you know light has dual property. What are they? And what are the proofs for that? Spectrum. Spectrum is a proof for the wave-like behavior, and black body radiation and photoelectric effects are the proofs for particle-like nature of the radiation, of the light radiation. Now de Broglie is telling, okay, light is showing both wave-like and particle-like property. And the question comes again, do the particle also has wave-like behavior? Do the particle behave only like matter, or it can show wave-like property also? Okay, light is a wave. Wave can show particle-like property. If it is so, a particle is a matter, is it not? A particle is a matter. That is a solid particle. If it is a solid particle, can it show wave-like behavior also? Yes, it can show. So de Broglie equation helped us to understand that matter or a solid particle can also behave like a particle as well as a wave. So matter also has dual behavior. Like radiation, matter also has dual behavior. Okay, so photons can behave like a particle. And what about the electron? Electron can behave like a wave. Photon means what? The smallest particle of a light. The light can behave like a particle. In that case, our electron can behave like a wave. So, photons and electrons have momentum as well as wavelength. So lambda, see, your particle also has a wavelength, okay? What is lambda? Lambda is equal to h by m into v. Lambda means wavelength is equal to h, Planck's constant, by mass of the particle into velocity. So when you substitute this Planck's constant, mass of the particle and velocity of the particle, you can calculate the wavelength of that particular particle. See, wavelength is actually a property of a wave, is it not? But for electron also you can calculate the wavelength. So this both has a dual behavior. The relationship is verified by de Broglie's equation. So lambda is equal to h by m into v. This is called as de Broglie's wavelength. Very important question, and you have to solve questions based on this particular formula. Okay, so one question for you. Determine the wavelength in meter of an electron. The mass is given to you. The mass of the electron is given to you. It is 9.11 into 10 power minus 31 kilograms, having a velocity of 5.65 into 10 power 7 meter per second. You know the Planck's constant, it is 6.626 into 10 power minus 34 joule seconds. Got it? And if you need another unit, if you are going to put your final result in kilogram per meter square per second, then you have to use this unit, right? Okay. Then so lambda is equal to h by m into v. You know h, you know the mass, you know the velocity, and you finally got the wavelength, lambda of the electron. Okay. Next, as I already told you, Bohr's theory cannot explain Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? That is also very important. Okay, what are the important things you need to understand? After the Bohr's theory, we have Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and de Broglie's wavelength. So de Broglie's wavelength helped us to understand that matter also behaves like a wave. And now what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? It is impossible to determine the exact momentum and the position of an electron simultaneously. This is a very important principle. Only this principle helped us to or paved the way for the quantum mechanics. Okay, the quantum mechanical model of an atom is the final model that we are using still now. After Bohr's theory, that quantum mechanical model gave exactly the structure of the atom. Say 99.9% of the structure of the atom was given by quantum mechanical model. Why I say 99.9? Because there can be room for still development of the atom. Is it not? So even after all these theories, some concepts is been developing for years and years. So after this quantum mechanical model also, there may be development of the structure of the atom. So this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, it is very important. It is the fundamental thing for the quantum mechanical model to develop, that we will see in the next class. Okay. For now, you understand what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what does it say? It is impossible to determine the exact momentum and the position of an electron simultaneously. So now you know electrons are moving in orbits, and orbits have fixed energy. Orbits are nothing but fixed energy levels. But if you cannot say the position of the electron perfectly. If you determine the position of the electron perfectly, what happens? The speed of the because electron is always moving. Is it not? It is not stable. It is always moving. So once if you determine the position of the electron, there is an error in the momentum of the electron. And once if you decide or determine the momentum, the speed of the electron, then there is an error or uncertainty in the position of the electron. So both cannot be given together. Both cannot be determined simultaneously. This is the theory given, this is the theory identified by Heisenberg. So what is that? Delta X means what? Position, uncertainty in the position. Why I put delta? Uncertainty, it is uncertain. And what is delta P? Momentum, uncertainty in the momentum. And if you multiply these uncertainties, it is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. So this is the relationship given by Heisenberg. Very important, like your de Broglie's wavelength. So delta P means what? P is equal to momentum, mass into velocity. So I am just replacing it here. Delta X into delta M into V, mass into velocity, is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. So this mass, if you bring it to the denominator, you get delta X into delta V is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi m. Got it? So h means Planck's constant, and 4 into pi, 4 is an integer, pi you can substitute, and what is the mass of the electron? You know, 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 kilograms. So if you know the uncertainty in the velocity, you can determine the position. If you know the uncertainty in the position, you can determine the velocity. But any one can be determined at one particular time. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you for listening to me, and one more session to go to complete this chapter. So please follow all the classes regularly and take down the notes and solve all the problems that I'm giving to you. Okay, so if you're not writing down, then you cannot practice it. So practice down all the problems and the formulas that I tell you. This chapter looks tough, but it is not actually very tough. Once if you understand things clearly, you can sort out the problems easily. Okay, so thank you. I'll meet you in the next class. Bye.